The blood should have been red. Emma Collins noticed that before she noticed the royal guards. Before the shouting. Before the heavy boots struck the wooden floor of Ironbell Inn hard enough to make every spoon on every table tremble. She noticed the blood first because blood was honest when people were not. Red meant fresh. Brown meant old. Pink meant water had touched it. Black meant rot, poison, or something buried deep enough in the body that ordinary hands should not touch it. But this blood was worse than black. It was dark with a greenish shine at the edges, soaking through the front of a young man's torn shirt in slow, heavy pulses that did not move like blood should move. It clung to the cloth. It dragged itself downward instead of spreading. Under the firelight, it looked almost oily. Emma stood frozen beside table 7 with a tray of barley soup balanced in both hands. The soup was going cold. She should have cared about that. Old Mr. Landry hated cold soup and hated waiting even more. He had already complained twice that evening about the draft near the window, once about the bread being too hard, and once about Emma walking too quietly behind him as if silence were an insult designed especially for his chair. But the young man in the guard's arms was dying. That made table 7 very small. "Clear the back room," one guard barked. His voice cracked on the last word. That was the second thing Emma noticed. Royal guards did not usually sound young, even when they were. They were trained to make fear look like command, trained to hold their shoulders square and their mouths still when everyone else panicked. But this one was pale beneath the dirt on his face, his brown hair damp with sweat. One hand pressed desperately against the boy's shoulder, as if pressure alone could keep death from slipping through his fingers. The wounded boy could not have been more than 17, maybe 18. He was tall in the way unfinished boys were tall, all long limbs and sharp angles not yet settled into manhood. Dark hair stuck to his forehead. His lips had gone colorless. One hand hung limp over the guard's arm, fingers twitching once, then stilling. Emma's stomach tightened. She had seen that stillness before. Not here. Not in Ironbell Inn, where the worst injuries were usually split knuckles, broken noses, kitchen burns, or drunken men who discovered too late that wolves did not enjoy being mocked after midnight. She had seen it years ago in her mother's sick room, a small room behind their cottage with one narrow bed, 3 shelves of dried herbs, and a basin that always smelled of boiled linen. Emma had been 12 the first time a hunter was carried in with blood that shone green-black at the edges. Her mother had taken one look at the wound and whispered a word Emma was never supposed to repeat near official healers. Ironvine. Emma's fingers tightened around the tray. The innkeeper, Mr. Bell, came rushing from the kitchen with his apron still dusted in flour. "My lords, of course. Yes, the back room. Right away." Emma moved. She moved. Not away. Toward them. Only 2 steps before she caught herself and stopped near the wall, lowering her eyes because a waitress did not step into the path of armed men. A waitress did not stare at royal insignias. A waitress did not look at a dying boy and think she knew something the men carrying him did not. The guards passed close enough that the smell reached her. Blood, rain, cold leather, and beneath it, sharp and bitter, the scent of crushed green bark. Emma's breath stopped. Ironvine sap. Not a story. Not memory. Not fear pretending to be knowledge. Real. The boy's head rolled slightly as they carried him past. His eyes opened for half a second, gray and unfocused, seeing nothing. Then his breath caught in his throat with a wet sound that made one of the guards curse under his breath. "Hold on, Prince Noah," he said. Emma went cold. "Prince." The tray dipped in her hands. Soup spilled over the rim of one bowl, hot against her thumb, but she barely felt it. The dying boy was Noah Ashford, the Alpha King's younger brother. And every person in Ironbell Inn had just become part of a royal emergency, whether they wanted to or not. Emma looked down at the dark drops left across the floorboards where the guards had passed. They did not spread. They sat there, thick and wrong, green-black beneath the lantern light. Her mother's voice rose from memory, calm and tired and urgent. "If the blood shines like bruised leaves, child, do not close the wound first." Emma swallowed. In the back room, someone shouted for healers. Emma stood beside table 7 with cold soup on her tray and a truth no one would ask a waitress to tell. The blood should have been red. And because it was not, the prince was running out of time. Emma Collins had not always been a waitress. That was the fact no one at Ironbell Inn bothered to know. To Mr. Bell, she was the girl who remembered which customers wanted extra salt, which travelers paid in copper, which wolves grew mean after their third cup of ale. To the regulars, she was quick hands, quiet feet, pale skin, light brown hair pinned beneath a plain ribbon, and a gray dress that always smelled faintly of smoke no matter how often she washed it. Useful. Forgettable. The kind of woman people noticed only when something was missing from their table. Emma had learned to accept that, because acceptance cost less than anger. Rent did not care whether a person had once known herbs by smell. Bread did not become cheaper because a girl could tell fever from infection by the color beneath a patient's jaw. Work was work, and Ironbell Inn paid every seventh evening if Mr. Bell had not found a reason to subtract for broken cups, late orders, or soup spilled by frightened hands. But before the inn, there had been the sickroom. It had stood behind her mother's cottage at the edge of Mercy Ridge, where the road bent toward the border forests and official healers rarely traveled unless someone rich enough sent a carriage. The room had been small, always too warm, with bundles of dried willow bark hanging from the rafters and jars of steeped roots lined along the wall in careful rows. Emma had grown up in the smell of boiled linen, vinegar, crushed leaves, blood, sweat, and her mother's steady voice telling frightened people to breathe. Mary Collins had not been licensed. That was what the village officials liked to say after she died, as if paper had ever held a hand through fever. But people came to her anyway. Hunters with torn legs, farm boys kicked by horses, Omega girls with bruised ribs they did not explain, old wolves whose hands shook too badly to hold a cup, men poisoned by plants they had not recognized until their mouths went numb, children coughing so hard their mothers cried quietly into their sleeves. Emma had carried water, then she had washed cloth. Then she had learned which wounds could be closed and which had to be cleaned first, which herbs eased pain and which only made a dying person sleep through it, which smells meant infection, which colors meant poison, and which kind of blood made her mother's face go silent. Ironvine blood had been one of them, green-black at the edge, heavy, wrong. Her mother had taught her never to seal an ironvine wound before washing the sap away, because the body would fight the healing and every spell or salve would turn against the flesh it meant to save. Emma knew that. But knowledge without rank was a dangerous thing. In the world outside Mercy Ridge, healers wore silver pins and spoke Latin over clean tables. Waitresses carried soup. Waitresses did not diagnose royal blood. Waitresses did not step into back rooms full of guards and say 25 experts were about to be wrong. So Emma stood near the wall of Ironbell Inn, tray still in her hands, listening as the first healer arrived. And from the back room, Prince Noah Ashford began to scream. The scream changed the inn before the king entered it. It cut through the low ceiling beams, through the smoke from the hearth, through the nervous silence of men pretending not to listen to death happening on the other side of a closed door. Cups stopped halfway to mouths. A card game near the window froze with coins still scattered between hands. Mr. Bell stood behind the counter with his flour-dusted apron twisted in both fists, looking suddenly like a man who had built his whole life out of wood and hoped royalty would not notice how easily wood burned. Emma did not move. The tray was still in her hands. The soup had gone cold. Behind the backroom door, voices overlapped in panic dressed as authority. Hold him down. More cloth. Where is the healer? His pulse is dropping. Then a new sound came from outside. Hooves. Not one horse. Many. They struck the frozen road in a rhythm too controlled to belong to travelers and too heavy to belong to villagers. The entire inn seemed to hear them at once. Heads turned toward the front windows. Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor and then stopped, as if standing made him too visible and sitting again might look disrespectful. The door opened before anyone knocked. Cold air swept in first. Then the guards. 4 of them entered in black leather marked with the Ashford crest, a wolf's head beneath a crown of dark iron. They did not shout. They did not need to. The room arranged itself around them the way water parts around stone. Men lowered their eyes. Wolves at the tables went still. Even the fires seemed to quiet, flames bending low in the sudden draft. Alpha King Gabriel Ashford stepped inside. Emma had heard his name before, of course. Everyone had. You heard the names of kings the way you heard weather warnings, through other people's caution. Gabriel Ashford, ruler of the Northern Pacts, breaker of the Thornridge Rebellion, a man said to have ended 3 blood feuds without raising his voice because the threat of his patience frightened men more than rage ever had. He was taller than she expected, but that was not what made the room shrink. It was the stillness in him. He wore a black traveling coat darkened by rain at the shoulders. His dark hair pushed back from a face made sharp by control. His eyes were gray, almost silver in the lamplight, and they moved once across the inn with enough precision to make every hidden thing feel temporarily exposed. Then Noah screamed again. Something in Gabriel's hand tightened. Only that. A brief whitening of his knuckles around the glove he had removed. No shout, no stumble, no public fracture. But Emma saw it because she had spent years watching people lose themselves in ways they hoped no one would notice. The Alpha King looked toward the back room. "Where is my brother?" His voice was low. The innkeeper nearly dropped to one knee. "Back room, Your Majesty. The healers are." Gabriel was already moving. The guards followed, but one remained near the door, blocking anyone from leaving. The message was clear enough. Until Prince Noah lived or died, Ironbell Inn was no longer an inn. It was a royal chamber with ale stains on the floor. Emma stepped back to let Gabriel pass. She kept her eyes down. That was what waitresses did when kings came close. But as he moved by her, the scent of rain and cold leather shifted, and beneath it came the sharper smell from the back room again. Ironvine sap. Fresh. Strong. Wrong. Gabriel reached the door and stopped for half a breath as another wet, broken cry came from inside. His shoulders did not bend. His face did not change. But Emma saw the truth anyway. The most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories was afraid. Not of battle, not of death, of losing the boy on the table before him. Then the backroom door opened, and the first healer stepped out with blood on both hands and no answer in his eyes. The first healer would not meet the king's eyes. That was how Emma knew the room had already begun to lose him. The man who stepped out of the back room wore a silver healer's pin at his collar and blood up to both wrists. Not bright blood, not the honest red of an open cut. This was darker, slicker, stained green-black along the edges where it dried against his fingers. He held his hands away from his robes as if the blood had offended him by refusing to behave. Gabriel Ashford looked at him. Nothing in the Alpha King's face moved, but the air around him sharpened. "Speak." The healer swallowed. "The wound resists closure, Your Majesty." "That is not an answer." "No, Your Majesty." A second healer pushed past him from inside the room. Older, gray-haired, already uncorking a vial between trembling fingers. Silverroot failed. Moonbalm failed. The blood-binding charm lasted less than 10 seconds. From inside, Noah cried out again. Emma flinched before she could stop herself. No one noticed. Everyone was looking at Gabriel. The Alpha King stepped into the back room, and because the door remained open, Emma saw more than she was meant to see. Prince Noah lay on the storage table where sacks of barley had been pushed aside and the wood covered hastily with white linens. The linens were ruined now. Blood soaked them in wide, ugly circles, dark at the center and green-black near the edges. For guards held him down, not cruelly, but with the desperation of men trying to keep a dying body from tearing itself apart. Healer after healer bent over him. One pressed glowing hands to the wound. Noah's back arched. The blood surged. Another scattered powdered silverroot along the shoulder. The powder turned black before it touched the skin. A third whispered a closing spell, tracing symbols in the air with 2 fingers. For a moment, the torn flesh seemed to draw together. Then it opened again. Wider. Worse. A sound moved through the room that was not quite a gasp and not quite a prayer. Emma's tray grew heavy in her hands. She should have turned away. Waitresses were not meant to watch royal bodies fail. They were not meant to learn the shape of a prince's wound, or the way a king's silence changed when each expert brought him closer to loss. But the door remained open, and Emma's eyes kept returning to the same wrong detail. They were trying to close it. Again and again. Every healer tried to force the wound shut. None of them cleaned what held it open. More healers arrived. 5, 10, 15. Emma lost count somewhere after the inn's front room filled with wet cloaks, silver pins, whispered credentials, and the sour smell of panic disguised as expertise. They came from nearby estates, from border posts, from private carriages summoned in the rain. Each entered with urgency. Each emerged quieter than before. By the 25th, the inn had gone completely still. The last healer was Marcus Vale. Emma knew his name because important men always brought their names into rooms before their hands did. He wore black healer's robes trimmed in white thread, his silver pin larger than the others, his expression arranged into noble sorrow before he even crossed the threshold. He examined Noah for less than a minute. Then he stepped back. "There is nothing more to do," Marcus Vale said. The words did not fall. They spread. Through the back room, through the inn, through every guard, every servant, every silent witness waiting for the Alpha King to decide what grief would look like when it finally reached him. Gabriel did not speak. His hand rested on the edge of the table near Noah's limp fingers. Emma saw his thumb move once, barely touching his brother's hand, as if reminding the boy that he was still there. Then Noah's breathing changed. Wet. Thin. Wrong. Emma looked at the green-black stain crawling across the linen. Her mother's voice came back with terrible clarity. "Do not close the wound first." Emma set the cold soup tray down on the nearest table. Because 25 healers had failed, and all of them had made the same mistake. The basin told the truth before any healer did. Emma saw it when a young maid pushed through the backroom door with both hands wrapped around the handles of a copper wash basin. The girl was pale, younger than Emma by several years, and trying very hard not to look at what floated inside the water she carried. Her steps were quick but unsteady. Dark liquid sloshed against the rim, staining the copper in slow streaks that did not rinse clean. "Take that outside," Marcus Vale snapped from the doorway. "Do not spill it." The maid nodded too fast and nearly dropped the basin. Emma reached for it before thinking. "Careful," she murmured. The girl looked at her with the blank, frightened gratitude of someone who had been given kindness at a moment when kindness felt illegal. Together they lowered the basin onto a side table near the hearth. That was when Emma saw the film. It floated on top of the bloody water in thin green-black ribbons, not mixing, not sinking, curling around the cloths like oil from a crushed leaf. The surface caught the firelight strangely, dull at one angle, glossy at another, like bruised ivy pressed beneath glass. Emma's stomach turned, not from the blood, from recognition. She reached for one of the used cloths before she could stop herself. It was white linen, or it had been. Now the center was soaked dark, and the edges had gone stiff where the green-black stain had touched them. Emma pinched one corner between her fingers and lifted it from the basin. The cloth stretched, then tightened. Then the edge curled inward as if something invisible had bitten it. Ironvine sap, real and fresh. Her mother had shown her that exact reaction once with a strip of old bandage and a bowl of water behind their cottage. Ironvine does not poison the blood first, she had said. It argues with the body. It tells the wound to stay open. If you force healing over it, the flesh tears itself apart, trying to obey two commands at once. Emma looked toward the back room. Marcus Vale was speaking to Gabriel now, voice heavy with professional sorrow. "The prince's body rejects treatment, Your Majesty. The wound is beyond intervention." Beyond intervention. The phrase made Emma's hands go cold. Noah was not beyond intervention. He was being treated in the wrong order. A closing charm would fail. Silverroot would fail. Moonbalm would fail. Anything meant to seal the flesh would only drive the sap deeper and make the bleeding worse. The healers were not losing because they lacked power. They were losing because none of them had washed away the thing holding the wound open. Emma set the cloth back in the basin. Her heart was beating too hard. A waitress did not correct royal healers. A waitress did not carry bloody evidence toward an Alpha King and say the men with silver pins had mistaken the problem. But Noah's breathing had thinned to a wet whisper. Emma took a clean napkin from her apron and dipped the corner into the basin. When she lifted it, the white fabric marked green-black instantly, the edge shrinking into a tight, ugly curl. Proof. Small proof. Kitchen proof. The kind official men laughed at until someone poor survived because of it. The young maid beside her whispered, "What is that?" Emma did not answer at first. She was looking at the backroom door, at the shadow of Gabriel Ashford standing beside his brother, at the 25 healers who had tried everything except the one thing that mattered. Then Noah stopped screaming. The silence that followed was worse. Emma closed her fingers around the stained napkin. "Ironvine," she said. And this time, when she moved toward the back room, she did not lower her eyes. Emma reached the backroom door before anyone thought to stop her. That was the advantage of being forgettable. People saw a waitress moving through an inn and assumed she was carrying something harmless. A cloth, a cup, a message from the kitchen. They did not look at the stained napkin in her hand or the way her face had gone still, not frightened now, not obedient, but focused with the sharpness of someone walking toward a fire because water was behind her and no one else had noticed. Inside the room, Prince Noah no longer screamed. He barely breathed. That frightened Emma more than the blood had. The storage room had become a battlefield without weapons. White linens lay soaked across the table. Bowls, bottles, torn bandages, silver-root powder, broken charm threads, and discarded healer's gloves covered every nearby surface. The air was thick with sweat, copper, rain-damp wool, and the bitter green scent that none of the healers had named correctly. Gabriel Ashford stood beside the table. One hand rested near Noah's wrist. The Alpha King's face revealed nothing. Not grief. Not panic. Not the kind of rage men expected from powerful wolves when something precious was being taken from them. But Emma saw the terrible control in the stillness of his shoulders, the way he seemed to be holding the entire room together only because breaking would not save his brother. Marcus Vale stood opposite him, arranging failure into dignity. His pulse is fading, the healer said. The body has rejected every known closure method. Because you keep trying to close it, Emma said. Every head turned. The room did not simply go quiet. It rejected the sound of her voice. Marcus Vale looked at her first, then at her gray dress, then at the white apron stained with soup and basin water. His expression shifted from surprise to insult so quickly it was almost beautiful. What did you say? Emma's fingers tightened around the napkin. You are sealing over ironvine sap. That is why the wound keeps tearing open. A guard stepped toward her. Girl, leave. No. The word came out before she could make it smaller. The guard's hand closed near his sword. Emma's mouth went dry, but she lifted the napkin anyway. The green-black stain had curled the white fabric into a stiff, ugly edge. This came from the wash basin. Ironvine floats before it sinks. It shrinks cloth. It smells like crushed bark after frost. She looked at Noah's wound because looking at Gabriel felt impossible. If you close the flesh before washing it out, the healing turns against him. Marcus laughed once. There was no humor in it. A waitress is diagnosing royal blood now. No, Emma said. I am telling you what is in it. Kitchen girls do not correct healers. The words hit exactly where they were meant to. Not her mind. Her place. Her apron. Her cracked shoes. Her years of carrying bowls for people who never asked what she knew before she became useful to them. Beta Cole Harrington, standing near the far wall with his gloves folded neatly in one hand, finally spoke. Remove her before she upsets the king further. Emma looked at him. Too quickly. Cole's face was calm, almost bored, but his right glove had a dark scrape near the thumb. Green-black at the edge. Her breath caught. He saw her see it. For the first time, something like warning entered his eyes. The guard took her arm. Emma did not fight him. Not yet. Fighting would only prove the story they already wanted. A hysterical waitress, a frightened servant, a lowborn girl mistaking old village tricks for royal medicine. But then Noah's chest stopped moving. For one impossible second, no one breathed either. Gabriel's hand closed around his brother's limp fingers. Marcus Vale went pale. And Emma understood that permission had become another word for letting the boy die. She pulled free. Not hard. Not wildly. Just enough. Then she looked straight at the Alpha King and said, If you want him to live, give me 1 minute. Gabriel Ashford looked at Emma for 1 full second. It felt longer than a minute. Long enough for the guards to tighten their grips on their weapons. Long enough for Marcus Vale to draw breath for another insult. Long enough for Beta Cole Harrington's scraped glove to disappear slowly behind his back. Then the Alpha King spoke. 1 minute. The room changed. Not because anyone believed her. Because he had allowed her to be obeyed. Emma moved before fear could return. Hot salt water, she said, turning toward the nearest kitchen boy frozen in the doorway. White vinegar. Clean linen. Willowbark if there is any. A small knife from the fire. No one moved for half a breath. Gabriel did not raise his voice. Now. The inn broke open around the command. The kitchen boy ran. The young maid grabbed linen from a shelf. Mr. Bell stumbled in with a ceramic bowl of salt water, so hot steam curled against Emma's face. Someone thrust a bottle of white vinegar into her hand. Someone else brought a kitchen knife with its thin blade glowing faintly from the hearth. Marcus stepped forward. Your Majesty, this is reckless. She will kill him. Gabriel's eyes remained on Noah. Then pray she is better than you. The words landed without volume. Marcus stopped. Emma did not let herself enjoy it. There was no time. Noah's skin had turned a terrible gray around the mouth. His chest fluttered once, too shallow to be called breathing. The wound at his shoulder gaped under torn linen, dark and wet, the edges shining with green-black sap where the healer's failed charms had driven it deeper into the torn flesh. Emma leaned over him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, though she did not know whether he could hear her. Then she poured vinegar into the salt water. The sharp smell filled the room. She dipped a clean cloth into the mixture, wrung it once, and pressed it around the wound. Noah's body jerked. A guard cursed. "Hold him steady," Emma said. Her voice did not shake. That surprised her. She cleaned in a circle first, not across the wound. Her mother's voice guided her hands from memory. Around before through. Loosen before pull. Do not chase the blood. Chase what does not belong there. The cloth turned green-black. Emma dropped it. Another cloth. Again. This time the sap lifted in strings so thin they looked like dark threads coming loose from the skin. The healers stared as the wound, for the first time since Noah had entered the inn, stopped fighting the hands touching it. 30 seconds. Maybe less. Emma took the heated knife and used the flat side, not the edge, to lift the last strip of ironvine from the deepest fold near the collarbone. It clung stubbornly, glossy and foul, then peeled away all at once into the cloth beneath her fingers. Noah's breath caught. Everyone froze. Then he inhaled. Thin. Broken. Alive. Emma grabbed the crushed willow bark, packed it against the bleeding vessel, and pressed with both hands. Not hard enough to crush. Hard enough to remind the body where to close. The blood pulsed once against her palm. Then slower. Again. Slower. Then it stopped surging. For one impossible moment, no one in the room made a sound. The boy on the table breathed again. Emma kept pressure on the wound, afraid to move, afraid to believe what her own hands had done. Gabriel Ashford stared at his brother's chest as it rose, fell, and rose again. Then he looked at Emma. The Alpha King of the Northern Packs, the man 25 healers had failed, had no words. And somehow, that silence was louder than any thanks could have been. The breathing did not make the room kind. That was the first thing Emma learned. Prince Noah Ashford was alive. His chest rose in shallow, uneven pulls beneath the ruined linen. The blood at his shoulder no longer surged in dark waves. The green-black shine had faded from the edge of the wound where Emma had washed the ironvine sap away, and the willow bark pressed under her palms held firm against the opened vessel. Still, no one cheered. No one thanked her. The room only stared. A waitress knelt beside royal blood with both hands on a prince's body, a kitchen knife cooling near her elbow, vinegar sharp in the air, and 25 healers standing useless behind her with silver pins on their collars and failure drying on their sleeves. That kind of truth did not become gratitude immediately. First, it became danger. Marcus Vale recovered fastest. "Step away from him," he said. Emma did not move. "If I release pressure too soon, he will bleed again." My spell finally stabilized him. Marcus turned toward Gabriel, voice gathering authority with every word. The closing charm must have taken hold after the obstruction weakened. The girl's interference was unnecessary and reckless. Emma almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because she had heard that tone before. Men used it when they wanted to take a simple thing done by poor hands and dress it in language expensive enough to belong to them. Noah breathed again. Thin, but real. Gabriel Ashford still had not spoken. His eyes moved from his brother's face to Emma's hands, then to Marcus Vale. The silence made Marcus speak faster. She used kitchen vinegar on royal flesh. A heated knife. Unmeasured herbs. Had the prince died, she would have been responsible. He was dying before I touched him, Emma said. The room turned back to her. Her voice had come out quieter than Marcus's, but it carried because the room was waiting for something to believe. Beta Cole Harrington stepped away from the wall. His right glove was back on his hand now. Emma noticed that first. Not his face. Not his perfect posture. The glove. Convenient, Cole said. A waitress recognizes a rare border sap no trained healer named, forces her way to the prince, and then performs a cure in front of the king. One might wonder how she knew exactly what to do unless she knew what had been used. There it was. The accusation did not strike her like a slap. It settled like a net. Emma felt the shape of it close around her apron, Her cracked shoes, her unlicensed knowledge, the stained napkin still on the table near the basin. A waitress was not allowed to be right unless someone powerful explained why. Without that explanation, correctness became suspicion. Gabriel's eyes shifted to Cole. Emma saw the moment Cole realized he had said too much. She reached for the cloth she had used to pull the final strip of sap from Noah's wound. It lay curled beside the bowl, stiff at the edges, stained green-black where the iron vine had clung to it like dead ivy. "This is what kept the wound open," she said. Marcus scoffed. "A stained rag proves nothing." Emma lifted it higher. "Then touch it." Marcus did not. No one missed that. Emma turned the cloth toward the lamp. The sap glistened darkly along the weave, thick and string-like, not mixed with blood but separate from it. "Ironvine does not appear inside a wound by accident," she said. "It has to be applied to the blade before the cut is made." The room went completely still. Cole's gloved hand curled at his side. Emma looked at it, then at Gabriel. "There was a scrape on Beta Harrington's glove," she said. "Green-black at the thumb, before he hit it." Cole's expression hardened. "Careful, girl." Gabriel finally spoke. "No," he said, voice low enough to chill the room. "Remove the glove." Cole did not move. 2 guards did. When they stripped the glove from his hand, the leather turned inside out, and along the inner thumb seam, dark green-black sap shone wet beneath the lamplight. Emma kept one hand pressed to Noah's wound. Noah kept breathing, and this time, when the room stared at her, it was not because she had interfered. It was because she had been right. The glove looked smaller without Cole Harrington's hand inside it. That was what made the evidence so terrible. A black leather glove, neatly stitched, polished until it caught the lamplight. The kind of thing a Beta wore beside kings and councilmen because rank required even murder to look well-dressed. Turned inside out, it was only leather. Soft lining, dark seams, a smear of green-black sap hidden where no one was meant to look. Iron vine, fresh, wet, enough to keep a prince bleeding while 25 healers tried to close a wound that had been ordered to stay open. Cole did not deny it at first. That was his mistake. For one breath, his face became honest. Not frightened, not guilty, calculating. His eyes moved from the glove to Noah, from Noah to the open door, from the door to Gabriel Ashford standing beside the table with his brother's blood on the edge of his sleeve. Then the mask returned. "My king," Cole said. "I handled the prince's cloak after he was brought in. The sap could have transferred from anything." Gabriel looked at him. No anger showed. That made the room more afraid. "Then why did you hide the glove?" Cole's mouth tightened. Marcus Vale stepped in too quickly. "Your Majesty, the prince still requires formal healing. This interrogation can wait." "No," Gabriel said. One word. The healer went silent. Emma kept pressure on Noah's shoulder. Her hands ached. Vinegar stung beneath her fingernails. The heat from the room pressed against her face, but her body felt cold now that the danger had changed shape. Saving Noah had been terrifying, but it had been simple in the way urgent things were simple. Remove the sap. Stop the bleeding. Make him breathe. This was different. This was power looking for somewhere to bury the truth. Gabriel turned to Marcus. "You said there was nothing more to do." Marcus swallowed. Based on the evidence available, the evidence was floating in the wash basin. The room held its breath. Gabriel looked toward the copper basin near the hearth, then to the stained cloth in Emma's hand, then finally to her face. For the first time, he spoke to her as if no one else stood between them. What would have happened if she had not cleaned the sap? Emma knew he was not asking because he needed the answer. He was asking because the room did. He would have bled until his body gave out, she said, and every attempt to close the wound would have made it faster. Gabriel's eyes did not leave hers. "My brother is alive because of you." The words entered the room slowly. No one knew where to put them. Emma looked down first, because praise from a king felt more dangerous than insult from a healer. Cole moved then. Only half a step. The guards seized him before the second. Gabriel did not even turn. "Lock the inn." The command spread through Ironbell like a storm shutting every window. Then he looked at Cole. "Who gave you the blade?" Cole's face paled. There it was. The question beneath the wound. Ironvine did not grow on roads. It did not cling to gloves by accident. It had been prepared, carried, applied, hidden. Noah had not been injured by chance. He had been delivered to death inside a room full of experts who would never think to ask a waitress what blood looked like before it lied. Cole said nothing. Gabriel stepped closer. Still calm. Still quiet. More frightening than fury. Then I will ask the blade. A guard brought the knife wrapped in cloth. Its edge was dark, but near the hilt, where a careless hand had wiped poorly, green-black sap clung in the smallest crescent. Gabriel looked at the mark, then at Emma. 25 healers had failed because they searched for a noble cure. A waitress had saved the prince because she looked at the wound. Gabriel turned to the room, his voice low enough to make every person lean toward judgment. From this moment, Emma Collins is under my protection. Anyone who calls her just a waitress again will answer to me. Emma's hands trembled then. Only then. Because Noah was breathing beneath her palms. Cole was in chains. Marcus Vale could not meet her eyes. And the Alpha King who had arrived with fear hidden in his fists was looking at her as if she had pulled his world back from the edge. She had not saved a prince with magic. She had not saved him with rank. She had remembered what pain taught poor women in rooms no one recorded. And for the first time in her life, everyone was listening. The inn stayed locked after Cole Harrington was taken away. Not because anyone outside was trying to enter. Because everyone inside had learned too late that danger did not always come through doors. Sometimes it stood quietly against the wall with clean gloves and a loyal title. Sometimes it spoke in a calm voice while a boy bled on a table. Sometimes it waited for experts to make the same mistake again and again, trusting that rank would blind them more completely than darkness ever could. Emma remained beside Noah until a healer she did not recognize replaced her hands with his. He did not push her aside. That was the first strange thing. He approached slowly, eyes lowered not in dismissal, but in something almost like respect, and said, "May I take the pressure now, Miss Collins?" Miss Collins. The name unsettled her more than the blood had. Emma looked at Gabriel before she meant to. The Alpha King stood at the head of the table, one hand resting near Noah's hair, his gaze fixed on his brother's shallow breathing. His face was still controlled, still carved into the shape of command, but the terrible tightness around his mouth had loosened by a fraction. Noah was alive. That single fact had changed the room. "Yes," Emma said. The healer's hands replaced hers. Carefully. Exactly where she had been pressing. Not over the wound. Not against her method. With it. Emma sat back on her heels, and the world tilted. Only then did she realize how long she had been holding herself upright on fear. Her fingers were stained green-black and red. Vinegar had dried along her wrists. Her apron was ruined. A lock of light brown hair had slipped loose from its ribbon and stuck to her cheek. She looked, she knew, like exactly what Marcus Vale had called her without using the words. A kitchen girl who had touched royal blood with kitchen hands. But Noah breathed. Every shallow rise of his chest answered the room better than she could. Marcus Vale stood near the shelves, pale and silent, his silver healer's pin catching lamplight like an accusation. He had not been chained. Not yet. But no one moved aside for him anymore. That was its own kind of punishment. The room had stopped believing his importance. Gabriel turned toward him. "You will surrender your pin." Marcus swallowed. "Your Majesty, now." The healer's hands shook as he removed it. The small silver pin looked almost foolish in his palm. Gabriel did not take it. "Give it to her." Emma froze. Marcus looked at her as if the order had struck him. Gabriel's voice did not rise. "The woman you mocked understood what you refused to see. Give it to her." Slowly, Marcus crossed the room. Emma did not reach for the pin at first. She did not want it. Not truly. A healer's pin would not bring back her mother's sick room, or the people official men had ignored, or the years Emma had spent carrying bowls while knowledge sat trapped behind her teeth. But then she thought of Noah's blood. Green-black. Wrong. And of 25 healers closing what should have been cleaned. Emma lifted her hand. Marcus placed the pin in her palm without meeting her eyes. It was cold. Heavier than it looked. Gabriel watched her close her fingers around it. "This does not make you royal healer," he said. Emma looked up. His gray eyes held hers, steady and unreadable. "It makes my court remember who saved my brother when royal healers failed." Her throat tightened. For once, Emma did not lower her eyes. Outside the backroom door, Ironbell Inn waited in frightened silence. But inside, beside a breathing prince and a king who had finally turned his attention toward the girl everyone had overlooked, Emma Collins understood that her life had shifted. Not gently, not safely, but completely. Noah woke before dawn. Not fully. Not with the clean, dramatic gasp people imagined when death released its grip. His return came smaller than that. A faint shift beneath the linen. A breath that did not rattle. 2 fingers curling once against the edge of the table as if his body, exhausted and confused, was trying to remember where pain ended and life began. Emma saw it first. Of course she did. She had been sitting on a low stool near the storage shelves because every time someone told her to rest somewhere warmer, her eyes returned to Noah's shoulder and the bandage holding steady beneath the healer's careful hands. The back room had changed while the night deepened. The bloodied linens were sealed in copper basins. The vinegar bowl had been removed. The kitchen knife wrapped as evidence. Marcus Vale's surrendered pin lay on the table before Gabriel Ashford like a small silver confession. But Noah breathed. That was the only part Emma trusted. His eyelids fluttered. The healer beside him leaned forward. Prince Noah? Gabriel was there in less than a breath. He did not rush. Kings did not rush when rooms were watching. But the distance between him and his brother disappeared so quickly that Emma understood the movement for what it was. Fear finally allowed to become hope. Noah's eyes opened halfway. Gray, unfocused, fever-bright. Gabe, he whispered. The Alpha King went still. Not the cold stillness of command. Not the dangerous silence that had made healers lower their eyes and guards straighten their backs. This stillness was different. It was the stillness of a man hearing a voice he had already begun to grieve. I'm here, Gabriel said. 2 words. Low. Rougher than anything Emma had heard from him all night. Noah's gaze drifted past him, slow and unsteady, until it found Emma. For one strange second, the prince looked not at her apron, not at the stains on her sleeves, not at the gray dress that marked her as someone meant to carry trays and vanish. He looked at her face as if some part of him remembered hands that had pulled him back from somewhere dark. She burned me, he murmured. Emma's stomach dropped. The room tightened. Then Noah's mouth moved again. Good. A sound passed through the healer that might have been a laugh if the room had been less afraid. Emma exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Gabriel turned his head slightly toward her. His expression did not soften in any obvious way, but something in his eyes did. Recognition, perhaps, or the first edge of a debt he had no intention of forgetting. Noah's fingers twitched again. Blade, he whispered. Gabriel leaned closer. Who held it? Noah's brow creased. Pain moved across his face. Emma stood before she realized she had done it. Do not force him, she said. Every guard looked at her. Old instinct struck hard. Apologize. Lower your eyes. Step back before someone remembers what you are. But Gabriel did not rebuke her. He only looked at Noah, then at the bandage, then back at Emma. She is right, he said. The words settled into the room more quietly than praise and more powerfully than protection. Noah's eyes closed again, but his breathing remained steady. Gabriel straightened. Outside the storage room, the Lockton waited under the blue-gray weight of morning. Cole Harrington sat in chains somewhere beyond the door. Marcus Vale stood stripped of his pen. 25 healers had become witnesses to their own blindness. And Emma Collins, who had entered the night as a waitress with cold soup on a tray, stood beside a living prince while the Alpha King listened when she spoke. The blade answered before Cole Harrington did. It lay on the storage table wrapped in a strip of clean linen, its dark handle turned toward the lamp, its edge no longer bright beneath the dried blood and green-black sap clinging near the hilt. A royal guard had brought it in just after Noah drifted back into sleep, and the room had gone quiet around it in the way rooms quieted around things that had already done damage. Emma did not want to look at it. She looked anyway. The blade was narrow, made for speed rather than battle, the kind of weapon that could slip between ribs or beneath armor before anyone understood that a conversation had become an attack. Its handle was plain enough to pass as a soldier's knife, but not plain to someone who had cleaned hunting gear, kitchen blades, and border tools since childhood. There was a groove beneath the hilt. Small, almost decorative. Not decoration. Emma stepped closer before she remembered she had not been invited. No one stopped her. That was still new. Gabriel Ashford noticed the movement of her eyes. What do you see? The question was quiet. It did not ask whether she had the right to answer. Emma swallowed and pointed to the groove. That channel is too clean. The guard holding the linen frowned. Clean. The sap should have smeared everywhere when the blade went in, but it gathered near the hilt and fed downward. That groove was cut to hold it. The room tightened. The healer beside Noah leaned in despite himself. Marcus Vale looked sick. Gabriel's eyes moved to the blade. then to the door beyond which Cole waited in chains. So the weapon was prepared. Yes, Emma said. By someone who knew Ironvine had to touch the wound deeply, not just the skin. Her own voice sounded strange to her. Steady. Too steady for a waitress standing under royal attention with blood still dried beneath her fingernails. Perhaps exhaustion had burned the fear out of her. Or perhaps fear was still there, but it no longer knew where to stand. Gabriel turned to the captain. Bring Harrington. Cole entered between two guards, wrists bound in iron. He looked less polished now. Not broken. Men like him did not break quickly. But the calm had thinned, and underneath it Emma saw the same thing she had seen when he hid the glove. Calculations searching for an exit. Gabriel lifted the blade in its linen. Cole's gaze flicked to the groove. Only once. Enough. Who prepared it? Gabriel asked. Cole said nothing. The silence did not help him. Not anymore. Emma looked at the blade again. It was not done here. Every eye turned. She wished they would not. But she continued because Noah was breathing behind her, and because poor knowledge had saved him once already. Ironvine dries fast when cut from the root. If it had been applied hours ago, it would have crusted. This sap is fresh. Whoever prepared the blade did it near the border road, after the ambush began, or just before. Cole's jaw hardened. Gabriel saw that too. There was no ambush, Gabriel said softly. The room went colder. Cole's nostrils flared. Gabriel stepped closer. My brother was delivered to this, and so 25 healers could fail in front of witnesses. His death was meant to look unavoidable. No one moved. Emma felt the truth settle into place with terrible clarity. Noah had not been attacked and rushed to safety. He had been staged. A dying prince. A room full of experts. A king forced to watch helplessly. A beta close enough to guide the story afterward. Gabriel's voice dropped. And you chose the one inn on the northern road where no royal healer would think to ask a waitress what she knew. For the first time, Cole looked at Emma as if she had become something worse than a witness. A mistake. Gabriel saw it. So did she. Cole Harrington had planned for grief. That became clear in the silence after Gabriel spoke. He had planned for panic, for blood, for a prince dying under bright healer charms while 25 experts exhausted themselves in front of witnesses. He had planned for Marcus Vale to call the wound impossible. He had planned for the Alpha King to stand helpless beside his brother, surrounded by men who would later swear that everything had been done. He had not planned for Emma Collins. That was why he looked at her now, with hatred stripped clean of manners. A waitress had ruined the shape of his murder. Emma felt the force of his stare, but she did not step back. Noah breathed behind her, slow and shallow, each rise of his chest a quiet refusal of Cole's design. Gabriel stood between the bound Beta and the table, not shielding Emma exactly, but placing himself where any threat would have to pass through him first. Who else knew? Gabriel asked. Cole's mouth twisted. You think one servant girl changes anything? The room went colder. Marcus Vale looked down. The captain of the guard reached for his sword. Gabriel lifted one hand, and no one moved further. She changed the only thing that mattered, he said. My brother lived. Cole's jaw tightened. For a moment, Emma thought he would keep silent. Then Noah stirred. Not fully awake, not strong enough to sit, but enough for his fingers to curl against the linen. His eyes opened to narrow slits, fevered and unfocused, yet fixed on the sound of Cole's voice. He was there, Noah whispered. Every breath in the room stopped. Gabriel turned instantly. Noah. Noah swallowed, grimacing. Before the blade. Cole told them not to kill me on the road. His eyes slid toward Emma, confused but certain. He said I had to die where healers could fail. Cole lunged. He made it half a step. The guards drove him to his knees, so hard the floorboards shook. This time, no one doubted what the chains meant. Gabriel looked at his brother first. He did not ask another question. He let the healer press Noah gently back against the table, let Emma check the bandage with careful fingers, let the boy's breathing settle again before he turned to the room. Only then did the Alpha King become judgment. Cole Harrington, he said, voice low and absolute. You conspired to murder royal blood, falsify an ambush, and use the failure of my own healers to hide treason. Cole spat blood onto the floor. Your court is weak. Your mercy made it weak. No, Gabriel said. My court became weak when it mistook rank for wisdom. The words struck harder than anger. His gaze moved to Marcus Vale, to the healers, to the guards, to every person who had dismissed Emma until her hands were the only ones saving Noah's life. 25 healers looked at a wound and saw a problem worthy of their pride. Emma Collins looked at the same wound and saw what was killing him. Emma's throat tightened. Gabriel turned toward her. This time, the room followed his gaze without hesitation. She was not heard because she was a waitress, he said. My brother is alive because she was one. No one spoke. No one dared reduce her again. Gabriel stepped closer, stopping at a respectful distance. You will come to Ashford Keep as my honored guest, if you choose. Not as a prisoner of gratitude. Not as a servant taken from one room to another. As the woman who saved my brother and exposed the man who tried to use our blindness against us. If you choose. Emma held those words carefully. They were stranger than protection, stranger than praise. They left room for her to be a person, not only a debt. Behind her, Noah's hand moved weakly until it found the edge of her apron. Stay, he whispered. Emma looked at the prince, then at the king, then at the inn where cold soup still waited somewhere on table 7. For once, no one ordered her. For once, the room waited. Emma closed her stained fingers around Marcus Vale's surrendered healer pin, felt its cold weight press into her palm, and lifted her head. I will come, she said. But I will not stop being the kind of woman who looks where others refuse to. Gabriel's eyes held hers. Then that is exactly the woman my court needs. Outside, dawn touched the windows of Ironbell Inn. The locked doors opened at last. Cole Harrington was dragged out in chains. Marcus Vale stood silent and stripped of his pin. Noah breathed beneath clean linen. Emma Collins had entered the night carrying soup. She left it carrying proof that poor hands could save royal blood, that forgotten knowledge could shame polished titles, and that sometimes the woman everyone overlooked was the only one close enough to see death coming. She had not solved the impossible with magic. She had solved it because she had been taught by pain. And the Alpha King, speechless no longer, made sure the whole kingdom would know her name.